Hello and welcome to a very special edition of the Dark Souls lore Q&A. Although this might be less of a special edition and more of a salty edition or a ranty edition, I'm going to cover two controversial subjects, or about as controversial as Dark Souls lore can get. Two subjects that perhaps rile me up personally more than any others. Obviously, if you're into the lore of Dark Souls, you understand that a lot of it comes down to speculation and theory crafting. But there is a difference between presenting a fact and a theory, and that's what riles me up, I suppose. Example, people saying that the old Dragon Slayer is in Hade's Tower of Flame because Ornstein in Dark Souls was an illusion and he came to Hade with Guinevere and Flan. If that's your theory, by all means, that's fine. But as of the time of writing, there is no in-game facts, there's no evidence to back that up. Whether or not that changes in Scholar of the First Sin edition or some other updates, you can say. And I bet now that I've done this, Scholar of the First Sin is going to be like, you know, oh, by the way, this is not Hade's Tower of Flame, it's actually Flan's Tower of Pancakes or some crap. Anyway, that's not what I'm going to talk about because I don't really feel too strongly one way or the other. Maybe Guinevere and Flan did go to Hade, maybe they didn't. There's not really any evidence one way or the other. But the things I am going to talk about today are Licia and the Nameless Usurper, as the first subject, and Artorias, and more specifically his dominant hand, because that's apparently a topic of contention, and that'll be subject number 2. There are some strange myths surrounding these two characters, and I figured I'd go ahead and make this before Scholar of the First Sin comes out, and no doubt makes me look like an ass by changing everything. Yay. So, the Nameless Usurper and Licia. I actually have a whole lore video about Licia, but when I made it I didn't have access to things that we now have access to as far as evidence goes. All I had, I was having to like take rubbish screenshots myself, but these days people have got like high-res images of the Nameless Usurper's face. But to cut a long story short, as of time of writing, Licia is not the Nameless Usurper. If they change that in Scholar, cool beans, but right now, no. They are wearing the same clothes, but that's it. Why are they not the same character? There are two hard facts to back that up. Number 1, you can kill Licia and the Nameless Usurper will still invade you. People cannot invade you after you kill them. Now you can say, oh, but the timelines and the going back and forth in different worlds, blah, but yeah, if you kill someone in your world, they are pretty much gone forever. If you kill Solaire, he's removed from your game world. You cannot summon him. If you kill Navlan, he cannot invade you, and so forth. But the second piece of evidence is, by far the more conclusive one. Licia has a unique model. The Nameless Usurper does not. That is to say, they have completely different faces. And yes, if you really want, you can theory craft that Licia has plastic surgery and then invades you, whilst under a disguise, but she wears the same clothes because she's not very smart. And that would be called grasping at straws. And if you grasp at something hard enough, you can come up with a theory that you are Gwyn's firstborn, or that Strayed is Gwyndolin. Think about it. Gwyndolin has snakes for limbs, and is a master of illusion. Who else do we know with snakes attached to themselves? Medusa? What if Gwyndolin cast an illusion over Gwyndolin and transformed into Strayed, and then stared at their snake legs and turned to stone? I guess that makes about as much sense as Licia having plastic surgery and becoming the Nameless Usurper. Sarcasm aside though, you can probably see where I'm going with this. The fact that Licia and Nameless Usurper have different faces should be all the evidence you need, surely. I've had one person complain that I actually photoshopped the image of Nameless Usurper's face, or that I made that character and invaded someone and they took a screenshot of me. Just to try and fool people. Come on, that's just being immature. Do you really think I would do that? Well, I wouldn't. But look, if you want to believe that Usurper is Licia, that's fine with me, to be honest. I don't mind what you believe. You can believe whatever you want. you know? What I find annoying and rude is when people claim that others, with good evidence, are wrong and then counter with some wild theory of their own, you know? That's the sort of nonsense I don't want to see, especially not on my channel. It's like being a grammar Nazi, sure, sometimes people mispronounce a word wrong or they spell it wrong. So what? It doesn't really hurt, like, to tolerate that. And please remember to be polite when you're talking about your own ideas and theories. It's going a bit off topic, but I'm seeing more and more comments that are very rude and hostile, whether directed at me or at, other people who have left comments. And I do not appreciate that. I can understand getting passionate about something, I mean, what I'm doing right now, but please, try and stay courteous, or at least, if you're doing it in my videos, try and respect each other. Be, polite. That said, this is still a very, very small number of comments. Maybe like, I don't know, like what, 1 in 100 comments is someone being a douchebag, but in general, the comments on my videos are very civil, which is rare on the internet, and especially rare for YouTube comment section, which, they don't have the best reputation as being a forum of mature discussion, but I think you guys do a pretty good job. Most of you guys are great at getting along, and I suppose it's a weird thing to say, but it does make me kinda happy to see that. And I hope you continue to do so, because it's really easy to be a douchebag over the internet, but the internet has enough dicks as it is, and I don't think it needs any more. Well, let's move on to second subject. Artorias. Is he left-handed? Is he right-handed? Is he both-handed? Both-handed's not really a thing, it's ambidextrous, whatever. The answer to this used to be much easier. We don't know. Prior to the Iron King DLC, there was no evidence whatsoever to suggest that Artorias was left-handed, but there was still a myth surrounding that, because of the Dark Souls cover. See, on the Artorias of the Abyss edition, we obviously have Artorias, whereas on the original Western Dark Souls cover, we have the Elite Knight, or Oscar. For some reason there was confusion and some people began to assume that it was in fact Artorias on the cover. And because that character is wielding a sword in their left hand, that Artorias too must be left-handed, because surely Oscar doesn't have his sword in his left hand and neither does the player. Most of the time. And I've made a video on this subject before as well, actually. But to summarise, that is not Artorias on the cover, I believe it's safe to say. Do we have 100% proof of that? No, you'd have to go find the guy, or girl for that matter, at original artist at Namco Bandai, and ask them, is it meant to be Artorias? But let's break it down and look at it from a few perspectives, shall we? Here's the Japanese Dark Souls cover. And that's obviously the Elite Knight, or Oscar, the Knight of the Undead Asylum, blah blah. But it's meant to represent the player, I assume. Now there's a really interesting little section in the Dark Souls design works where the artist who made this cover talks about her mindset in creating it. And I'm just going to put this out there and say that I really love this cover. It perfectly sums up the Dark Souls experience, I feel. Or maybe it doesn't sum it up, but it's the right atmosphere for Dark Souls. If I was going to design a cover for Dark Souls, and I would probably suck because I can't design anything, but that, I feel, is the perfect Dark Souls cover. But it is the Elite Knight, yes, there's no doubt about that. That's definitely the Elite Knight set. So when it comes to the Western Dark Souls cover, we know that From sent assets to Bandai Namco, and their artists created a cover they deemed fitting for the Western market, for America, and I'm assuming it was for America, and then they just used the same one in Europe as well, because Europe apparently aren't important enough to get our own covers most of the time, but we do sometimes. To put it very bluntly, Japanese game covers tend to be more subtle. I don't want to say artistic, but definitely more subtle, and Western game covers lean towards exciting, explosive, and eye-catching. There are bright, vibrant colours, usually blue and orange, and There's a mysterious sense of adventure that you get from a single look. The fact that the armour is slightly wrong and that he's holding his sword, if it's indeed a he, in his left hand are just artistic liberties. It was probably made by an artist at Namco who never played Dark Souls before, and just made something from the assets available. I mean, you know, there's like, I don't know how these big game companies work, but I would assume that they have, you know, like an art team, like, you know, marketing people who design their graphic banners for Twitter and Facebook and all these things, and these people just use the assets they have and they make the cover. That's just an assumption, but I do think it's safe to say the artist, you know, probably wasn't like a master Dark Souls player, as Dark Souls wasn't out at that point. And like, you don't really need to have the artist who's making the cover be an expert at the game necessarily. I mean, they should be, obviously. You want someone who's been working on the game to design the cover because they understand the game best, but from a marketing perspective, that's not always the case. Sometimes you just need something that doesn't have to represent the game as much as it just has to be eye-catching. And I'm kind of waffling a bit, so let's move on. But yeah, whoever designed the cover, maybe they didn't know about Artorias. Remember, Artorias wasn't even in the game at this point, so even if they had played like a preview build, you know, they probably would go, who's Artorias? Oh, you mean the guy mentioned in the ring? Yeah, I'll put him on the cover, blah. But yeah, he had no presence in the game at all, other than being mentioned in like a few, you know, it's like the wolf ring and the sword and stuff. There's nothing to warrant such an importance that they would put him on the cover either. I mean, think about it from that perspective. It's like, what if you bought the Halo Master Chief Collection, which has a picture of Master Chief's face, or not his face, his helmet on the cover, and then he wasn't in the game at all? You'd be like, why is that on the cover, you know? If you have something on the cover of a game, or a movie, or anything, it should be relevant. And Artorias at that point wasn't relevant. His story wasn't so important that they had to put him on the cover. And to be honest, if you look at it, you can clearly see, in my opinion, that it's intended to be the Elite Knight set, with a few minor errors here and there. Sure, the sword is closer to the Black Knight Ultra Greatsword, only the scale's all messed up. And the shield, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that armor is the Elite Knight set. Definitely looks more like the Elite Knight set than the Artorias set. And yeah, you might say, well, it's Artorias before he was corrupted, but if he was corrupted and his armor got all messed up, then like the skirt thing wouldn't get longer. That doesn't make sense. Anyway, if you want to believe it's Artorias on the cover entering the abyss, I'm not going to stop you, and I can't stop you from thinking that. Just remember, you personally believing something is very different to claiming something is a hard fact, and there are no hard facts to suggest this is Artorias. So saying that is Artorias on the cover, entering the abyss, isn't a fact. It's your opinion, unless you have some, you know, secret info that I don't know about. But yeah, that was the sole piece of evidence people had, well, apart from one guy who linked me some fan art and thought that was official, but yeah, there are no facts to suggest it's Artorias, and that's the only piece of evidence people did have when they say that Artorias is left-handed. In the game, he wields his sword in his right hand. On the cover of Artorias of the Abyss, Artorias of the Abyss, he's using his right hand. And all concept art that I have seen of him shows him using his right hand. However, you can point out, and you would be very smart to do so, there is no concept art, as far as I'm aware, of Artorias using both sword and shield. We have no official art of him using his shield, as far as I'm aware. My theory on the matter is that, you know, Manus, or the humanity creatures, shattered Artorias' shield armor, rendering it useless, hence why he left his shield to protect Sith. That makes more sense than his sword arm being crushed. I mean, obviously you could say Manus might have grabbed his arm and, you know, started swinging him around whilst he was attacking and broken his arm, blah blah blah. But I honestly think it makes more sense to assume Artorias just thought he'd block Manus, or the humanity, and have you tried blocking Manus? You need a lot of stability. But yeah, I can understand that's not really evidence. I'm not saying it is evidence, that's my opinion on it. So it becomes a case of, I can't prove it is, but you can't prove it isn't. So all we have to go by is what we can see in game, which is Artorias using his right hand. as he does on the cover, and as he does in the official art. And I think it is worth mentioning that there are quite a few items that talk about Artorias in the game, and there's a few characters that speak about him. None of them mention him being left-handed in Dark Souls 1. It wasn't really a big issue to me, I just tried to present both sides of the argument. Though I personally believe Artorias was intended to be either right-handed or ambidextrous. But then came the Iron King DLC, and you know about that, don't you? The Majestic Greatsword basically implies that Artorias was left-handed. But you know what, that just looks like a retcon to me. And it's like how Leia told Obi-Wan, "You served my father in the Clone Wars," when I don't really remember Obi-Wan ever serving her father. Whether she's talking about Anakin or her actual, adopted father. Maybe I'm just being stubborn at this point, but it would honestly take for the original designers behind Artorias to state their intent for me to change my mind, and it's not an isolated experience. Whenever a sequel attempts to retcon pre-established canon or events, I tend to ignore it, because I don't like retcons. But hey, even if Artorias is left-handed, it doesn't bother me. I just never really saw why people got so passionate about it. So I tried to present what facts there are, along with my own theories. And that's another problem we run into in the lore community now and then. Mistaking and getting mixed up between facts and theories. If you go and watch through all my videos, and count the number of times I say, seemingly, so it seems, apparently, or something like that, you would probably get into the 200s or something. Point is, I don't want you to take my word as fact. Not most of the time anyway. If I say, I believe Seath is Priscilla's creator or father, that's speculation, Lots of people believe it is the case, but it isn't confirmed. And then there are actual hard facts like Licia and Usurper. I suppose that's kinda sending mixed messages, isn't it? On the one hand, you should certainly think for yourself and not let the popular opinion, have any effect on what you believe. But on the other hand, you have to listen to reason when people are presenting facts, or at least insofar as you don't tell people something like, "Hey Silvermont, do your research! Old Dragon Slayer is Ornstein who was protecting Gwynver, who came to Hard with Flan!" Because that's just plain rude, and kind of wrong, because I do my research most of the time, and yeah, I try to present facts where I find them. Man, I swear, Scholar of the First Sin edition is gonna come out and make me look like a complete retard, I bet. That's just life though, Sometimes I am wrong, I will freely admit it. It's very, very easy to be wrong in the Dark Souls lore situation, but I would never let that stop me, and you shouldn't let it stop you either, unless you're really wrong. Because it's not really about being right or wrong. In my opinion, it's about telling a story. So, sure, if you want to write a few paragraphs telling a story about how Guinevere and Flan, went and formed Haid, that's cool, man. That's awesome, but just, you have to remember that it's still not a fact. It's just you presenting your opinion in theory. I hope I kind of explained that well enough, because I know it is kind of saying, do this, but don't do it now. It's nice to vent now and then. Next time, we'll cover some more of your questions and theories, but I just had to get Licia and Artorias out of the way. Because man, it gets brought up now and then, and what silly theories have you heard about Dark Souls lore? Because I tell you, there are some crazy ones out there. I think the strangest one I ever heard was something about Doctor Who being the chosen undead, or because the chosen undead dies and comes back to life, and there's loads of chosen undeads who are all of us as players, and when Doctor Who dies, he becomes the new Doctor Who or something. It was deeply confusing to me, as I've never watched Doctor Who, so I had no idea what they were talking about, but hey, that's it from me. This was hopefully the only Salty Rants edition of Dark Souls Q&A. And you should know that I wrote salty rants with squiggly lines next to it. Till next time, thanks for watching, listening, and so on. And I will see you guys next time, and take care.